You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. With me as always is the lovely Anna and Rick. How are you today, mates?
Doing well today, thank you, Paul.
Absolutely fantastic.
Lovely. Well, today we are elated to have an absolute legend as our guest. He is a vastly talented and remarkably innovative programmer, along with his wife Roberta, whom together are the bloody pantheon of computer gaming. They created Sierra Online, the Elysian of the industry. Sierra's games have provided immeasurable happiness to countless people, such as my co-hosts, those listening, my father, myself, and now even my son. So it is truly an honor to welcome you, Mr. Ken Williams, to the show. How the bloody hell are you?
Oh, very good. Thank you for having me. I'm just amazed that people still remember Sierra 25 years later. It's kind of a surprise to me. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. We do more than remember. I think a lot of us obsess over it. Sierra honestly still costs me a bloody fortune because I'm always on eBay trying to get the old boxes.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I can't believe that phenomena, but I'm impressed. Very nice.
And it's funny you say that because even now, like the people who grew up playing your games are now passing it on to future generations, having their kids play it. And, kids are responding very well to it. So, there will be future generations of people who grew up with Sierra just as we did 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, very cool. Well, hopefully someday I'll have grandkids and I can introduce them to our old games. Mm-hmm. We keep hoping. But
yeah, that would be lovely. It's quite, Sierra's quite a family tradition for me personally, as I grew up playing them kind of on my father's lap, and now my 5-year-old son sits on my lap and plays, Space Quest and Echo Quest, and just, I could go on and on, plays lots of titles with me. So it's really been quite a family thing. So Sierra's part of the family, and that's why I've got bloody throw pillows and t-shirts with the logo on it and everything.
I think that's such a true story for many of us. I, as well, sat on my father's knee and played Sierra games. I grew up with the games, and now my children also all play them. It's become a part of my household, as the Sierra games are all displayed right in my living room on the big shelf. I look at them, I play them almost every day, and here I am. I'm in my 40s, so thank you, Ken.
Wow. Well, what can I tell you? Yeah. Well, I'm honored.
Do you miss it? Do you miss the games industry? Like, I know it's been a long time for you, and I know you're comfortably retired from it and kind of left it behind. But is there anything you miss about it, or do you ever have that sort of that pull back?
No, I mean, obviously we miss it all. I mean, we think about it all the time, and I don't know. Several times we thought, would we ever build games again? But we've just been away from it too long. It's sad that it was a great period in our life. It went for 20 years, and it was just because I had, I don't know, I could do so much in those days. I mean, you could think about something, or you'd see something cool in technology, and you would think about, I see this feature, what can I do with that? And, Sierra had a big development group. We were almost all internally developed, so we had about 700 developers. And with a group that big, if I saw something, a new sound card, a new graphic capability, I could go to the organization and say, let's go do something cool with that. And now, you just feel so disconnected from the world, like you have no influence anymore, and you can't. It's tough to go from where you feel like you're really kind of building an industry to just being happily retired. Being retired has its own advantages, but there's nothing like running a company like Sierra.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of a company that you really couldn't run today, or at least not necessarily you, but you just wouldn't see that today from anyone else, because I know Sierra really put that emphasis on what isn't out there that we can create. What are people not doing? Whereas, the industry today is very much, what did everyone do that's successful? Let's do that. Right.
Right.
Yeah. I know that is. It was funny in those days. I refused to hire anybody from a competitor. Liked the idea that Sierra was located up at Yosemite, that we were a long ways from any competitor, and because I wanted our people kind of not to be prejudiced by other people's products. And today I think a lot of the publishing companies are strictly publishers. They work with outside development groups, and Sierra was kind of an unusual beast that was run completely differently than I think today's companies are run. And it worked for us. Plus the other thing that worked for us in those days was that we had our own programming language, our own way of doing things, and it was kind of nice. Yeah, we did some very cool stuff. And as I look at the games industry today, I mean, the games do look better, but in some ways they seem harder to get into and kind of, I don't know, not as easy to get into or have fun with as some of the older games, even though they look way more amazing.
That's kind of the trouble that I have. Every time I go to play a new game, I want to break after about half an hour, and I want to go back to a game that I remember, that I know the storyline of. I want to go back to King's Quest IV. I want to go back to Quest for Glory. What about you, Ken? Is there a game do you play computer games? Is there a game that you would want to go to?
No, no, I just never seem to have fun. I mean, I always have fun, but never have time. In fact, even in the old days, I wasn't really a gamer. I enjoyed Leisure Suit Larry and Space Quest because I loved the humor. And then I played a lot of chess. I would play. I'm trying to think I loved the Incredible Machine that we did. And I like pinball, and I would like the flight sims, like the Dynamics Red Baron and Aces in the Pacific. But these days, no, I just never seem to have time to play a game. Once in a while, I'll load one up just to see what the technology looks like, but that's about it. I just installed Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it took 95 gigabytes to install that thing. And so I started trying to run the tutorial, and it really kind of takes over your machine. So I don't know. I'll probably try that, and that's about it. I'm not. I guess surprisingly, I'm not much of a gamer. I'm more of a technology for technology's sake. When we started Sierra, my vision was more to compete with Microsoft, and it was based on doing a Fortran compiler. And then Roberta talked me into doing Mystery House. And that was a game, and nobody cared about my compiler, and everybody loved her game. And that kind of put us on a different direction. So,
Well, even though you didn't end up competing directly with Bill Gates, you did compete successfully against George Lucas. So that's still a huge win. From what I recall, I think you guys pretty regularly outsold the competitors, LucasArts, and that actually brings me to a question. Well, I guess two-part. Have you recently revisited any of the Sierra games just for even 5 minutes, like a quick dose of nostalgia? And the other part of it is, despite saying that you didn't like your team to play the competitors' games, since that time has now passed, did you ever go back and look at some of their games, like, I don't know, Monkey Island or something like that?
Well, I would study the competitors' games. I remember, like seeing Loom and Monkey Island and some of those games, and they scared the heck out of me because a lot of our revenue was coming from adventure games, and we kind of had that category to ourselves. And then when Myst came out and the LucasArts products, the Indiana Jones, all that stuff, it was... it was clear that we were not going to have that category to ourselves. Even the Infocom products, their parsing was incredible. And had they decided to do graphics instead of steering off into business software, we'd have probably been hurt badly by it, because they did really good stuff, really, very creative. So, amazingly, as famous as we were for our adventure games, I was always trying to figure out what we could do in addition to that, just so that we didn't have all of our eggs in one basket. And Well, products like EcoQuest or EchoQuest, however you pronounce it, and Dr. Brain, those were attempts to take our adventure game technology and use it in other kinds of products. The Realm, a online multiplayer game. Even the Sierra Network was an attempt to use kind of our core technology to do something other than just adventure games. And it worked. I mean, we did do a lot of revenue other than just adventure games.
From what I heard about the Sierra Network, too, you wanted it to be available to everybody. So you wanted connection between grandma and grandson and people that were a little bit further away. So it felt like you were trying to create a sense of community with it. Did you feel that for the time that it was out there, is that something you accomplished?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine now, but the Sierra Network, the original name for the company was Online Systems, and that was because prior to starting Sierra, I had been in Los Angeles doing, my specialty was coding for lots of terminals connected to an IBM mainframe. And so when we started Sierra, there was no such thing as the internet. There weren't even modems yet, really, when we started Sierra. There were 300 baud acoustic modems. And there was no internet or nothing to kind of link all the computers together. And in I don't remember what year, 91 or something, when we did the Sierra Network, we were still a couple of years prior to the internet coming along, maybe even 4 years prior. And that started out of the initial vision for it was to do, my grandma was getting old at that time and was stuck home. And I was saying, what if I could what if I could create something where she could pick up a card game 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime she wanted. And the initial product was called the Constant Companion. And I went to a big hardware company, NEC and to Sprint, and said to Sprint, if you guys can provide a network backbone, the communications, and if NEC will give me the computers, then I'll go out to a bunch of seniors and put computers in their homes, and I'll write the software to let them play games against each other. And when we did that, I mean, we had all these seniors that were playing with each other who had never seen a computer or and nobody had seen a network. And out of that grew the Sierra Network, which had, it's hard to imagine, but because it was in those days 1,200 baud modems and 2,400 baud modems. And we put the network together and suddenly had thousands of people doing flight simulators. And we had kids' games like Boogers. We had flight sims. We had racing games. We had fantasy role-playing games. We had gambling games. It was very cool. And even on the card games, I think Bill Gates and Buffett were playing against each other on our bridge games. Wow. And Gates called, this was years before the internet, and said, can we buy the Sierra Network? And we wound up partnering it with AT&T. But it was, definitely, I look back on the Sierra days, just in terms of cool technology, to think how far ahead of the world we were at that point in time is pretty incredible. And but that was then.
You guys were always just one step ahead, always looking for the next innovation and to be the first, if you will, in something, whether it came to graphics in an adventure game or multimedia and things like that. I mean, I've even long just admired your creative thinking and how you kind of how you were sneaking graphics into the high-res adventures, almost like a Trojan horse, almost like tricking the computer into displaying graphics. So it kind of makes me wonder, between, again, having so many firsts and innovations and iconic best-selling titles, continuously outselling your competitors, including the comfortably funded LucasArts, could you tell us maybe what you feel your greatest achievements were, perhaps personally and for Sierra as a company?
Well, I don't know. Just being number one in the business. We, at one time, it's hard for me to imagine how successful we were. And and some of it was just by getting there first. I guess I would like to claim that I was a genius, but there's a lot to be said for a very forgiving industry. We were, I mean, I was, what was I, maybe a 25-year-old kid in those days, and, made a lot of mistakes and, partied way too much. And, we were run pretty poorly in the early days, but we had some, I guess, core beliefs, which was to take really good care of customers. We always had a customer satisfaction policy that served us very well, and a vision for always kind of leading the industry and being ahead of it. And and also, our using our own language, which allowed us to adapt to new platforms faster than anybody else. Because we were kind of the first. Today everybody has an engine when they do a game. But the good news was that for us was that we had our own engine, that we owned it, we controlled it. We had internally, we were divided into a compiler group and a tools group and an application coding group. And it allowed us to move fast. So I don't know. Yeah, there was, I was just looking at a list of all of Sierra's firsts. I mean, we were the first to support a lot of the fancy graphics cards, the first to support sound cards. We kind of drove the sound card industry.
Yeah.
It was a lot of firsts, and it was, it's tough to see them now because, you look at the old games and they look so prehistoric. It's hard to imagine what they looked like at the time. And the other thing that was, I guess, exciting for us is that I always, one of our tougher competitors was always Electronic Arts. And at the time, we had an internal campaign saying we'd give 10 shares of stock to everybody in the company, even the extended contractors and everybody else, if we could just beat Electronic Arts. And we focused on that for like 5 years, and we finally took them and passed them on sales numbers. And that was a big deal for us.
Yeah.
But, and then it all crashed and burned, which is the depressing part. But, oh well.
Sometimes after being really big, things can end really suddenly. But I don't know. I consider the legacy from that 20 years to outlast sort of hopefully most of the negative feelings that are out there nowadays.
Yeah. No, it was always when I would go to work, one of the things that I always told myself is that I wanted to build a company that would be around for my grandkids. And so a lot of what I did each day was to focus on how to put walls around Sierra so that the company would be defensible and would have a solid base. I was always worried that we could take a hit in any one side and take the company under. And there's a lot of companies that we competed with in the early days that didn't make it. So a lot of my business strategy, I guess you'd say, was, what do I got to do to kind of lock in Sierra? And then we sold the company. And I thought I had all those blocks in place, but when the new people bought it, they ran it into the ground. And that's probably kind of the great frustration of my life, is both the loss of all the products that would have still been around today, and all of the, Sierra at the time had 1,000 employees, and all of them were hurt by the sale of the company. So that was kind of the depressing part of all of it. Yeah, and you just don't like to see something you work so hard on destroyed.
No, and I guess it becomes a different kind of legacy then, I guess, instead of still creating in the same way, people are still enjoying. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, at least the games are still there. I was just looking at a list of all the games, and I can't believe it. There's one guy that was writing a book on all of the different product releases or something, and I was shocked by how much he had, and then I saw that was only book 1 of 4. So it's... we did a lot of products. We probably, I can't even imagine. We were doing something like 70 products a year, and in lots of different categories. And then there's all the, we called them rollovers, where you do a game, you suddenly have to do an Apple version and a Mac version and a Windows version. And you wind up, then you do a French version, an Italian version, a German version, an American version. And it becomes a lot of stuff happening in product development. But we were in different categories. I mean, we had, my goal was always to be a third of revenue in each of education, entertainment, and productivity, and we never really got there. It was funny. I was just looking at the stats for the last year of the company, and we were still probably 75% games, and of that game revenue, over half was in the adventure game category. Probably the last big adventure game that I did was Phantasmagoria. And that was a big hit. That sold 1 million copies.
That's
Huge
incredible.
production on that game. I mean, so much work put into it. It was like it was more of a movie than a movie was.
Yeah, it was. It was funny. I was talking to Roberta, and I made the comment that the script was longer for Phantasmagoria than most movies. And she said, well, let me think about it. And she said, oh, yeah, it was like 6 volumes or something like that, whereas a movie might be. Yeah, because, in a movie, everything, all the dialogue is over in 90 minutes. And she had to film everything. So, those were cool days when you could want to do something like that and build a studio. And I don't know if anybody's doing games like that anymore, or if they are, if they've got the same focus on interactivity. For us, it was, in fact, I never grew comfortable with speech in games, because when you're playing the game, you never like to sit still. You always kind of like to, be in control. And if a character's doing, 2 paragraphs of text, then you're stuck staring at your screen, when really you want to be able to do something, make something happen.
Just a quick follow-up on Phantasmagoria. I'm kind of curious because I believe the budget, from what I recall, kind of skyrocketed past expectations, and I was wondering kind of how nervous you may or may not have gotten during that time when you saw the budget, just crawling and crawling. Obviously, the game in hindsight was a smash success, and not for naught. But I was just curious if that had made you nervous, and actually more so, just a quick thought on what it was like to visit the set of that game, or even Gabriel Knight 2, like the set of those live action games.
Yeah, I don't remember the budget particularly freaking me out, because and it was big. I think for those days, I think it was around 5 or 6 million, which was a lot of money even for us. But what was worrying me was the disk space. We were going to put it on CD-ROM, but pretty quickly we realized it wasn't going to fit on 1 CD-ROM, and then we realized it wouldn't fit on 2, and then not on 3, and not on 4. And I think we ultimately shipped it on 7 CD-ROMs, and that creates problems in that when somebody's playing the game, they want to be able to wander through the world, and how do they do that? By constantly having to swap CDs. And today you'd probably install the whole thing on a hard drive, but that wasn't how it was working in those days. So, so the budgeted disk space was freaking me out. And also the loss in quality, because we were filming it at full film quality, but in order to get it to fit on the CDs, we were shrinking it to horrible resolution, like a screen. I think a target screen in those days was like 800 by 600.
Wow.
And and it was just such a loss in quality. Even the audio. And then we goofed. We were rookies at doing all this, and if you listen to that game, a lot of the sound is real echoey, and we had to go back and do voiceover to dub a lot of the voice, which kind of really hurt things. But it was cool, and I never visited the set for Phantaz. I did for Gabriel Knight, and that one was different in that they actually took a big building and built a physical set inside the building. So it really was like the way a film would be done, where we had rooms with no ceilings and cameras hanging down over the walls, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and just to speak on how big Sierra's legacy really is Dean Erickson, who starred as Gabriel Knight. I mean, even he has a large fan base on Facebook, for example, just for being the guy in Gabriel Knight. So it just goes to show how much impact these games had.
Yep, it was definitely. I don't know. I mean, somebody's got to be doing stuff like that these days, but I don't know. haven't really tracked the industry. We after Sierra, Roberta and I, we were kind of burnt out on the business. 20 years will. I was definitely ready to try something new by the end. Roberta wasn't. I mean, she would have kept going forever and ever and ever. She was having a lot of fun building the games, and sorry to see it end. But the problem was that with that many games going and trying to build the games, I was spending all of my time on airplanes, flying from studio to studio. One of my rules was that I didn't want more than 100 people in any one place because I thought creativity would go away. So we had, I don't know how many studios, like 12 different small studios scattered all over the world. And I would have to, it would take me a solid month to go around and look at each of the games out of every 3 months. And then I would start the process again. So it was a project. I was sick of riding on airplanes by the end. But we did cool things. And so that made it worthwhile.
And speaking of fan followings, if it would please you and Roberta to know, Cedric from King's Quest V has a very strong following to this day. In fact, has had a bit of a revival in which there's some posters on Facebook who are absolutely obsessed and make posts like every day honoring Cedric the Owl from King's Quest V.
All right. She's actually in the other room talking to a friend of hers, but I might try to go twist her arm to come in for 5 minutes or something.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Well, do you want to take a break and I'll go see if I can talk her into just doing a few minutes?
Sure. That'd be just
Okay,
done.
hang on. I'll see what she's doing. Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Roberta, how are you?
Hey. Pretty good. A little surprised.
Oh my God, speaking of
I didn't know
surprises.
Ken was talking to you.
No, yeah. Oh man, this is such an honor to speak with you.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it is a tremendous honor. I was just calming my nerves down speaking with your lovely husband, and now my nerves have gone through the roof again.
We'll slow down. Just take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath. Okay.
I'll
All
try.
right, we're good.
How are you doing these days?
I'm just doing fine.
Oh, great.
I am writing a book.
Oh, wow.
That's what
That's
I'm
exciting.
doing. But it's not a book about computer games.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with it, and it's not. It probably is not anything that would be all that exciting to most people. But it's,
What is it,
about- Well, I got into genealogy,
Ooh.
and my mom is Irish, and so I started looking in the Irish side of my family, and did a lot of research. So I wrote a book on the Irish immigration to the United States. From the Great Famine, and using my family as main characters, principal characters. I did a lot of research, found out a lot of really good stuff. And it's kind of a book written as a novel, sort of fictionalized in many, many ways, but using my family as characters set into the real-time era of the country of Ireland back before the famine, and setting in what happened to them way back to medieval England and on up. So it's kind of like a historical novel, I guess you could say. It's a historical novel, but using characters, dialogue, acts, emotions, scenes. I think hopefully emotional scenes, all the way to immigrating to America and going through the Great Famine, and some characters, people dying, and it's not fun, but set within historical times. That's what
that sounds amazing.
It's different.
Being creative and coming up with stories and bringing life into characters is something, as far as my experience goes, you've done always. So I'm really looking forward to this. You've got me all aflutter about it.
Oh,
That's
well,
great.
well, I mean, it's, I worked on adventure games, but it's not the same. That's one of the things I wanted to do, was to see if I could write a book. and but a book that was more novelized, where you have characters and dialogue and story, like any story that has climax and builds and climax and then what happened and then what happened and then what happened, but never actually ever wrote an actual book,
right?
Which is way different than an adventure game, as you can imagine. And so I think I bit off a lot to to do something like this, to do genealogy, find out all the ins and outs of this family, and I interviewed people in Ireland, England, and all over the United States that were part of the family, of anything they knew, any stories, and especially if there were skeletons in the closet. I wanted that.
Yeah,
you want it juicy. You want it as juicy as you can get. And just lots of facts, but yet it's not something that is for just people in my family at all. I mean, I wanted to write it as if you have any interest in history at all, and you're just interested in Irish history, especially what happened in the famine and why so many Irish immigrated to America, this would tell you why. So amazing. I bit off a lot, so we'll see how it goes.
I'm really glad that you're writing that book, because I think a lot of us that fell in love with your games, it's really about the storytelling that you're able to present. You're a magnificent storyteller, and I think maybe a perk to writing a book instead of a game is you don't have to give the characters like 6 responses for each scenario.
No, that's true. I get to write linearly. I get to write an actual, but I always seem to set myself up for challenges. Because rather than just sitting down and writing a plain old story, I have to write a story, my very first one, that is based upon real people. And when you are, and this is one of the things I learned about writing historical novels, is it'd be as if you were going to write a story about Henry VIII. A lot of people have written about him and his wife, Henry VIII and the Tudors and that kind of thing, and television series and everything been written about him. And you can certainly fictionalize it, and you have to, and you bring in other characters, and you have to add dialogue, and you have to make them say things and do things that you have no idea that they did it, but you do it for the story reasons. You have to make it interesting, or people aren't going to want to know. But still, in all, you still have to stay within context of real of history, or what they actually did do. They did do this, or they experienced that, and this thing over here. But within that, you get to kind of develop the characters and add more to it, and more context and more story of your own making. Just to make it interesting. So that's what I've done.
Well, your storytelling definitely. I'm not sure how much you're aware of this. Obviously, the impact you've had on the gaming industry, but I'm not sure if you had quite the full awareness of like the impact you've had on a lot of people's lives. Like we were just saying to Ken about how people who grew up with your games are now passing it on to their children and having them play your games, and they're like. There are huge fan bases for Cedric from King's Quest V, or the actor from Phantasmagoria, and it just lives on so strong even to this day, and will be passed on for future generations. It's in case you didn't know, you probably should, that your games, your work, everything is really has resonated with an entire generation of us and future generations to come.
I am honored that you're saying that. I'm humbled, honestly. I am. It's hard for me to believe that, when you look at the resolution of the old games, in comparison to today, that anybody would want to play them. But I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, well, I can say for a fact, I played King's Quest with my father when I was about 5, and my 5-year-old son has been playing King's Quest with me just this very week. So it's really become a family tradition now that's being passed around all because of what you created.
Yeah. So I think though, since he's so young, and probably isn't as aware of all the super high res 3D, flying cameras and 3D worlds and all that exist with computer games and video games now. He doesn't know yet, perhaps, because he's too young. So maybe it's good that you get him involved while he's still young before he gets, what's the word I'm looking for, kind of ruined by all those good graphics. And then try to go back and see the old graphics.
Well, there is something that really captures the imagination of the old graphics. Like, there are a lot of independent developers now who are following in the footsteps of Sierra and LucasArts adventure games. They go back to the pixel art. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's like a section of independent game developers who are really basically mimicking that style, that throwback style.
Mm-hmm. Huh. And do you know why they're doing that?
Because they love Sierra and LucasArts so much, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we want to see these games. We're really interested as fans too. So there is a market out there.
Because it might not be like the billion-dollar market these days, but there are still a lot of us fans who are still chomping at the bit because we grew up and we want more of the adventure games, and we just it's something which obviously once Sierra went away, there's always been the people who just want more, who really vie for those old days of like the pixel art and the more imaginative storytelling, more so than just like the photorealistic guns blazing kind of games.
Yeah, right. I have a question for you then. So why do you think that these types of games that you say are still quite an audience for it, and people are kind of going back and doing them again, but they still have more the old look? That's the way I'm getting that from you, that they still have that kind of that old look. Why has nobody done adventure games, say like we used to do, or what they're going back and doing now, but really updated art and updated, maybe using 3D or something? Why is nobody doing that? But yet it's an adventure game in the old style. Mm-hmm. Do you know why?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. I think there is a decent amount of them that do try and use the more modern graphics, but I think it comes down to it's more indie studios that are making these games, so it's easier for them to make a magnificently beautiful pixel art game, whereas the tools they might have for a 3D engine are a little, what the indie has available compared to the AAA titles, it's a little farther behind.
Yeah.
So and also just the nostalgia.
It sounds to me, so the big companies that have more money don't want to put the money into it, probably because they probably don't believe in that style of game, that they're just probably don't think that it could have that big of an audience. I disagree, but that's just me.
Yeah, and it never went away, the adventure fans. I think the big companies want to make just ridiculous amounts of money instead of just make money, because they would definitely do all right with adventure games for sure. We're still here and wanting it.
Yeah, that's funny. I really, one of the things I wanted to do before we sold Sierra was to see, because I could tell toward the end when we sold Sierra, that the adventure game genre was going to run into some problems or issues. I could see the future, where the gaming was going. It was beginning to go the direction we all know it's gone, and I could see that. But I kept thinking that I could figure out how to make that not happen. Right. Using 3D. It didn't happen with King's Quest VIII, Mask of Eternity, because I wasn't able to work on it correctly and get it done. And then we sold the company. But I really, really did want to set the challenge up for myself to figure out how to bring it up into the 21st century adventure gaming in much more immersive 3D worlds. But I never got the chance. We sold the company, and that was that. And I'm not saying that I'm the only one, that could do it, but because of Sierra, and that would have been behind me to make it happen, we could have done that. But whereas it sounds like other companies that have more money and the means to do it just don't want to do it. That doesn't mean that somebody couldn't.
And that ends up leaving me wandering around in the video store in the late 90s and early 2000s saying, where's a game for me? And then, you know what? I'd come back home and I'd load up King's Quest IV and just feel happier playing that than anything else that was coming
Well,
out.
I appreciate that. I really do. Really appreciate that. So I miss it too. Really, I do. You're not alone. I do. I miss it a lot.
Well, if you can ever be peer pressured into it, we'd love for you to come back and make us a boat quest where the goal is you have to get your dogs a passport, something like that.
Yeah, no, I think unfortunately we all have to look for somebody who is working on them these days that's just going to break through somehow, and that maybe can somehow convince these. Give me the name of a company that you think could afford to and would be the best company that might want to put their means and resources into an adventure game, whatever that company is, that maybe could take this game designer that seems to have the talent to do it and give them a chance to see what they can do and bring it up to what we all think that we'd like to see graphically with animations, but yet is still that same game. I think that there is a game out there and a person, if there is a company that is willing to do it and give them the means to do it.
Actually, Roberta, while we have you here, what was your opinion of the rebooted King's Quest games?
I have to admit that I just played the first one. Mm-hmm. And then I never went on and played the rest of it. But I enjoyed what I saw. Mm-hmm. But it still just wasn't exactly it. And I just couldn't tell you exactly why.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it. And it's been a while since I've done that. It's been a couple of years, several years, like 5 years, I think. Mm-hmm. So I can't right now analyze it for you. But they were close. I think they did as good as you could do with someone else's game, my game, and to try to say what would Roberta have done if we were her, and to try to figure that out. I think they did a really good job with what they had, and they gave it a really good go. Mm-hmm. But I still don't think they quite hit what today's modern players would want, and I don't know why. I can't analyze that for you. What do you think?
I myself only really played the first one. It's been sitting on my wish list for the longest time. But I just know from the Classic Gamers Guild community and just and other Sierra groups around the internet, I just see that it is a bit polarizing. Like, people either love it or they're pretty disappointed in it. So it's kind of this ongoing debate as to the two different camps.
Well, the fact that I didn't go on and play it might maybe say something, about it sort of missed it for me a little bit. But I think they gave it a really good try. Mm-hmm. It's not easy to take up somebody else's work and try to go on with it. And I really wanted them to, and I wanted it to do well. And I think it did decent, didn't it? It did decently well, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it didn't. There was something, but I definitely don't want to complain at all. Or I'm very happy and proud that they tried, and they did the best they could given all the circumstances.
Quick question from me, if you don't mind. When you were working with Phantasmagoria, did you spend a lot of time on the set? Were you kind of micromanaging what was going on day to day?
Yeah.
I'm just imagining you were such a huge part of it.
Oh yeah, I was there every second. I mean, I was obviously there from the very, very beginning. Mm-hmm. In fact, I just found, I was looking through some old photographs, and one of our we have drawers of old family photographs and photographs of different things. And I found a pad of paper in there, and I said, "Oh, what is this?" And I started reading it. Oh, it was a lot of my old notes that I was taking before I even wrote Phantasmagoria. It was just all my notes on what was scary, and I had some other ideas for other scary idea games and what they were, and just my notes from just what is scary, what makes me scared, and what would be a good storyline, and I had all those notes from it. So, and that was several years before I even sat down and wrote it, and then writing the game, huge script, and working very, very closely with our art director was just phenomenal. His name is Andy Hoyos, and just phenomenal. And I worked really close with him on all the art, and with Mark Siebert on the actors and finding the actors, and director. We needed a movie director, somebody who actually directed movies and actors. I mean, that was not me or anybody at Sierra to do that. We've directed voice actors, but not actors. And just, we built a studio, and I had to figure out the interface, how we were going to do that with actors. And we needed to make it, I wanted to make the game a little easier to play. I didn't want to make it too difficult, because I figured with actors, it might bring in more other people that don't normally play computer games. And in those days, we called them computer games.
Actually.
And that would not normally play a computer game, but because we were using actors and that the graphics were going to be more realistic back then, that it would bring in people who were not necessarily computer game players, but because it had movie aspects, I figured it would bring in regular people. And so the interface had to be easy to handle, easy to do. And so I had to work on that and figure out what that was. But then one of the big challenges was it's not a movie. It's not a script, but with actors, you're obviously going to have scenes that you're going to film. They had to be short, very short and sweet. But then using an actor, we had to figure out how to break down. We used to call them animations, but it's still an animation. But if you were filming an actor or actress doing something, sitting down in a chair, picking something up, or walking, or running, or whatever in this case she is doing, you have to cut it up into short little snippets so that you could put it all over in a game that's interactive, so that it feels more like what it might have felt like in playing King's Quest as much as possible. But yet you're using an actor to do that. And trying to figure out how you do that and make it come out and feel more like a game rather than a movie. That took a lot of thought and to figure that out. So I had to be there every second in the studio. I sat in the chair right next to the director and with the actors every minute, every scene, and just to say it can only be like this because we're not shooting a movie. I just kept saying to the director, we're not shooting a movie. This is not a movie. Right. This is a game. 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 And so they understood this is not a movie. And everything is very short, very short. And so that if a player decided to do one thing versus another, then we got to be able to do that. And just change over and immediately to something different that she's doing. And it's got to be immediate and it has to be as seamless as possible. And yeah, so I was there until the very, very end.
Yeah, it was genuinely trailblazing.
Using kind of blue screen. We had to interlay, I guess you'd say, actors over and onto a 3D rendered set. Wow. The whole set was rendered entirely in 3D from top to bottom. And so we could move our camera angles whichever way we wanted. If a scene was going to happen at a certain camera angle, we had it. And we put it up there, but we had to interlay her or whatever other actors onto that, and they were interacting in the 3D world. So if they sat on an artistic 3D chair that didn't exist in reality, it just existed as a picture on your screen, and she had to sit in it, or another character had to sit in that chair, she had to really sit on something. But it wasn't going to be that actual chair you saw on the computer screen, but she had to sit on something, and so she would sit on a blue box that was set exactly where the chair is in the picture. Exactly. So whenever the actors were acting, we would in the studio, we would see the picture of the angle of the 3D scene that we were using for that particular, whatever she's doing. Say she's going to sit in the chair in the kitchen. She's going to sit in the chair in the kitchen. And so we would see the angle of the 3D kitchen on a monitor. And then we had another monitor next to it that showed the same scene, but it was all blue. Everything was blue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would have to place a blue box, and we had people that were setting up our blue screen, everything. And so we would have somebody take the blue box and place it in our background blue screen. We had another camera on a whole black background of plywood, painted blue, and walk in with a box. And we would see them on one screen walking in, holding a blue box, walking into the scene. And we would see them then, though, walking into the 3D rendered kitchen at the same time. And they'd say, where do you want us to place the box? And we'd say, over to your left a little bit, walk over a step, right there. No, that's not quite. Because we're watching them placing the box both in reality against a blue background over here. Everything's blue, but we're also watching, we could see them in the picture, the 3D rendered kitchen scene. And we could see, and because they're patting the top of it, so we could see where they're trying to play. We couldn't see it though, because it disappears. Couldn't see a blue box in the 3D rendered. They had to. That's right. We had to, they had to move it around, and then they would sit on the blue box over here, and then we'd have to see if they're sitting on the chair because we couldn't see the box. And they'd say, no, you're not sitting on the chair. You're like sitting in air over here. Got to move it over. And then they had to keep moving it around until there it is. You got it. So if you see her sitting down in a chair in the scene, you know how we did it. Mm-hmm. And that was true for everything where she interacted with anything that we had to set up. We had to set up blue plywood and then cut holes in it. If there's going to be a sink, if it's in the bathroom, we had to cut holes in it. And then if she had to set something down on the counter next to the sink in a bathroom, like a brush, she had to really set it there. And she was, and we'd put a mirror we'd have a blue screen, and we'd put the mirror for the bathroom in and among a blue screen plywood thing with a plywood blue countertop. It was, we did a lot of stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it took us about 4 months. Wow. Of 6 days a week. Wow. We only took off Sundays. Right. 6 days a week of shooting for and long days, 12-hour days, 4 months to shoot everything we needed to do.
You must have been really sick of the color blue by the end of that experience.
It was one of the most interesting experiences of my life.
It still fascinates the fans to this day. We're going to be interviewing David Holm later on this podcast on another episode. There are so many fans.
He'll tell you all about the blue screen. Oh, God. He'll tell you the same things, how we had to do it. It was, It was really, really, I enjoyed it so much.
Mm-hmm. I know, so you're working on a book and Ken is working on his book as well. Have you had time and have you had a chance to read The Sierra Adventure by Sean Mills?
I looked at it. We have it, and I leafed through it.
Okay.
I'm sorry that I say that I didn't read it. I mean, it's not a secret that I'm not, I'm not easy to get for an interview. And this just happened because he came in and he lassoed me and just dragged me in. But actually, once you sit me down, I'm pretty good about talking. But
we really appreciate that.
But I probably would have said no. So I really, and the reason why is because I just feel like I did that, and I'm a very forward thinking person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always thinking ahead. I tell everybody I know and others and everybody else that I always feel like I'm never quite in the present. I always think I'm always about 6 months ahead of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way I am. Everything in my life is planned way ahead. I'm always thinking that, God, what am I going to do next year? Everything's all planned out and what I want to do and different projects that I'm working on. And we did our circumnavigating around the world and we did that and then writing and then getting in the genealogy and then just writing this other book. And so I'm always thinking about new things, other things that I want to do. And so going back seems to me kind of not me, I guess you could say. And
fair enough.
So I will do it. I will do it. But, I'm always thinking of something new. I guess is the best way of putting it. I don't know how else to say it.
No, of course. And that's what made you and Ken and Sierra what it is, because you're always thinking ahead, right?
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, you had a lot of firsts and a lot of innovations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
From crossing the Atlantic to going to Croatia, Turkey, and Japan. I mean, you did all of that, but I think first you traveled the world with the games.
Yes. Well, you mean in the games? You mean?
Well,
or
I mean, traveling.
When I was doing games, or
exactly when you were making games and playing the games. I mean, the games were set in our world and all different worlds, and then afterwards, it's just great to me that you actually got to travel the world and go to real places. It seems like a natural flow to me.
Well, I always wanted to travel. I mean, that from the time I was a little kid, and just I always wanted to travel. And my parents used to go every summer. We had my dad a couple weeks vacation from his job, and we'd get in the car and go somewhere. And I was always so excited to go wherever we went, even if it was just to Yosemite National Park or to Glacier National Park in Montana or wherever we went. I was always excited to travel, but I wanted to travel really far, and we never did with my parents, but that was what I wanted to do. So travel has always been a thing for me, and just experiencing adventure. I just like to be out there and do and see and experience, and that's just the way I am. And it comes out in the games, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Could you let me know what your favorite game is that you created and your favorite game from Sierra that wasn't yours?
The favorite game? Well, that's so hard to answer because there's favorites in different ways. I enjoyed doing Phantasmagoria more than any of the other games. It was so challenging. I like challenges. I like challenges. And so if something is a real big challenge for me, I always enjoy it more. Sorry about my dogs.
Oh, no problem. What are their names?
Oh, that one was Keely.
Keely?
Yeah, Keely. The other one is, she's being a little quieter. The other one's Tundra.
Tundra.
But anyway, no, I've always liked challenges, and Phantasmagoria was a big challenge, and I really enjoyed doing it. So that one was a favorite. King's Quest, of course, is favorite because it's what it was the big, the big hit and what everybody loves and everything. And it came from my childhood and all of that. So that's a favorite. And then I actually enjoyed the Colonel's Bequest with
Colonel's
I
Bequest.
really wanted to do I wanted to start a Laura Bow series, but it never really happened. I did the first one, and then Bruce Balfour did the second one, and then for some reason it just never went on, and I got into other games, saying do this one or do that one, and so
Well, Colonel's
never
Bequest
really
is
went
definitely a big favorite of mine. It was, I actually, it really influenced me a lot when I was younger in school.
the
And
Colonel's Bequest.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, good. You don't hear too many people that played that.
yeah.
But I
yeah.
enjoyed doing it.
And a good friend of ours, Julia Minamata, she's making a game called The Crimson Diamond, which is very inspired by the Colonel's Bequest art style and story.
Including the text parser part.
Yeah. But I would say those three I enjoyed the most. But among those three, each of them I enjoyed for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I guess if I had to say which one did I enjoy the most, I would say Phantasmagoria. There's the other one. That's true.
There you go.
So, and then you said, and then of others that I did not. Right. I would probably say Space Quest.
Yeah,
Nice.
Good answer.
Yeah.
I think I played every one of those.
yeah,
Nice.
It was just funny and cute, and
yeah.
I really like the two guys. So I would say that. That's just my personal
Oh, for sure.
preference.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It's such an amazing pleasure to get to talk to you.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, and an
it's-
honor.
Well, I'm humbled. Okay, I'm very humbled, and thank you very much for the actually very good questions. So
Well,
Thank you. Well, I will say that the on behalf of the Classic Gamers Guild and everyone in it, I'm sure everyone wants you to know how much your games have touched their lives and will continue to touch the lives of their future generations.
thank you. I appreciate it. I really do. So, well, have a good rest of your day,
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you,
Roberta.
and well, you never know. We may talk again.
I hope so.
That would be
I
great.
absolutely hope so.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good that you were able to get Roberta. That's going to be kind of a coup because she doesn't do these things.
Yeah. Oh no, that was the last thing I was expecting to happen, to be perfectly honest.
I've been staring at her picture on the back of boxes like my whole life. So
Yeah.
So thank you for that. So you are working on a book of your own. Not all fairy tales have happy endings.
That's correct.
And is that still slated for the October release? Is that how are you coming along with that?
I think it's done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got some people correcting spelling on it, and that's about it. It turned out different than I started because, just because of me. I guess it turned out because I'm. So it's more, when my perspective on CR was different than everybody else's because I was more of the. I hate to say corporate bureaucrat, but I was kind of above it, figuring out strategy and product strategy and branding strategy, and figuring out how to pay the bills. And in some ways, I think what people really want in a book about Sierra is the products and the designers. So people may be disappointed. It depends, I guess, on. It will certainly be a view into Sierra that no other book has. And there's been a lot written about Sierra. It's more about managing Sierra and how to motivate creative people, how to stop writer's block, tips for people that are developing games, how to break into the game industry. Talks a little about the disaster that occurred when we went to sell the company. Talks about me and Roberta as kids and how we met and did all of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of... we've been married now for longer than most people have been alive, I think.
Yeah.
47 years.
Wow.
Yeah, anyway, so I wrote a book, and anybody that's once notified when it comes out can go to kensbook.com, KENSBOOK.com, and sign up, and I'll send an email when the book's ready, which hopefully is going to be beginning of October. So
that's kind of what really interests me the most about it, is because it is from your perspective. Like, no one really talks about the business side so much as the creative side, or if they do talk about business, they talk about like sort of the later moments of it, but they don't really talk about like the business growth and direction of Sierra from like start to finish.
Yeah, there's some fun stuff in there. There's all the signing up Half-Life and meeting with the id Software guys, which was kind of fun, and some hidden stuff like working with John Travolta on a exercise program, or I don't know, but meetings with Bill Gates, and I don't know, a lot of great some stuff with Jobs and Wozniak. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff.
I already asked Roberta this, but I know you've contributed a bit of story to the Sierra Adventure by Sean Mills. Have you had a chance to read through the book yet?
Yep, I read the whole book. I read it kind of at one sitting. I stayed up most of the night reading it. It was kind of fun. I don't know how fun it would be for people that weren't there. In some ways, it's the book I wish I could have written, but it would require. I can't imagine how much research he did. He must have called 100 people and taken a year of his life. Whereas for my book, I just kind of wrote what I remembered and didn't do a lot of research. So impressive book.
Glad to hear you feel that way. It was a fun book to read for me. So I was just putting aside quotes of my favorite parts of the book, and then I realized I've quoted pretty much the whole book.
Yeah, I've been recommending it almost in every interview because it's the book I wish I could have written. I wasn't. I don't know. Anyway, I loved it. It was a chance to kind of get to remember, I guess, all of those people who I'd long forgotten. So, those were pretty good days.
Now, that all said, were there any stories in the book that you felt were quite different from how you saw it through your perspective?
No. Nothing stands out. I remember there was a lot of that I didn't know because, I hate to say I was in an ivory tower, except for I kind of was. In that, even, other than the early days, when Sierra started getting big, it wasn't, I was always jealous of our developers. More than anything, I think what I wanted after Sierra was to be able to go back and write code. It's frustrating to show up for a meeting and have somebody showing you their game, and they're all excited about it, and you have to be kind of the corporate idiot looking at their game and thinking you understand their game in 15 minutes, whereas, it's a lot more fun in the trenches building games than it is, paying the bills and stuff. So it was fun. It was a chance to see the side of Sierra that I never got to see, other than in the very, very early days.
Were there any big surprises for you reading the book?
No, only that... there was no controversy. I was reading the whole thing thinking, gosh, I hope they didn't talk about any of this stuff. And they didn't. No, the book was pretty well behaved. Although there was not much talk about it. In the early days, Stephen Levy definitely chronicled our early adventures with the book Hackers.
Right.
But that was really just the first 2 or 3 years. He just was there at the right time to... when we were all young kids and kind of nutty. But so I read his book, and it was a fun book. I hope everybody reads it that's a Sierra fan. I mean, there's nothing else like it out there.
Yeah, I think part of the reason the book is so enjoyable for the fans is thanks to your forward thinking and putting the authors of the games on the boxes back in the day, so that growing up, the names that Scott and Mark, the two guys, and the Coles, and Christy Marks, Jane Jensen, etc., like they became kind of like, celebrities to us in a sense. You know, we knew these almost mythical creatures that were creating this magic for us that we love. So reading the book now, because we grew up seeing the names on the boxes, it's like, you know, we feel like we know them in a sense. Whereas the book, or Sean's book gives us a backstage pass, I guess.
Yep. Well, and they were all special people. I mean, when I would look for a designer, I mean, that was something I looked for, was somebody who was super into whatever their subject matter is. I mean, when you meet, you know, Lori and Corey Cole, and they live for those games. I mean, they are those games. It's, you know, a real extension of their personality. It, it wasn't, you know, it was just kind of my core belief was that people had to be passionate about the subject. And I would describe it as, you know, looking at them to see if their eyes lit up when they talked about something. And if they didn't, then they shouldn't be building a game. And,
Yeah,
that passion really bleeds through.
Well, you know, you meet Al Lowe and you know you've met somebody, or even Roberta. I mean, she's,
That's for sure.
you know, she's definitely a personality.
Yeah.
When she starts talking about one of her games, the passion comes through. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
That was
may I
a
ask,
good
what was the mindset in putting in kind of advertising the creators on the boxes? Because from what I recall, I mean, I think you guys were one of the, if not the first to do that, and not a lot of people really even, I don't think they even do it anymore. It was just a very unique and I think quite a genius thing to do, because like I said, it made us feel even more connected to the product. So what was the thought behind advertising the creators on the boxes?
Well, it was a bigger deal than perhaps, you know, people realize, in that behind the scenes, I guess part of my vision, in those days I used to always compare our business to the book industry. And I would say that, you know, great books are only written by one author. And that, you know, even if you were to take two famous authors and have them both work together to collaborate on a book, you'd come out with a book that was worse than if one of them did it. So what I was always looking for was a designer who could kind of, in effect, single-handedly create the product and use the other people as their arms and legs, but keep all creative control with the author of the game. And a lot of what I write about in my book is the how hard that was to do, because everybody on a game project, if you suddenly have 50 people on a project, they all want to put their personal mark on it, and that just muddies the thing. And I really wanted to, you know, so a lot of what I was doing was empowering the designers, and I would support them even when I thought they were wrong, because, you know, even Roberta wrong is better than somebody else on the project muddying her vision.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I spent all my time supporting them. And then to the public, I wanted the designers to become as known to the buyers as, you know, when you go into a bookstore, you'll look for a Stephen King book or a Grisham novel or something like that. So it's, if I could, you get to know the person's style and what they do. And so I wanted to create a brand for them and build a following for each of the people. And we had our Interaction magazine, which was created to be kind of a proprietary way of reaching our customers. And I ran Sierra kind of like a big fan club in a way, in that behind the scenes I was computing what I would think of as the lifetime value of a customer, kind of like this customer we think we can get, you know, $150 a year out of. So it's worth spending, you know, $10 or $20 or $30 to promote to that person. And it was expensive to produce Interaction magazine and send it out 4 times a year. You know, each of those magazines in those days would cost me $3 or $4. And it was expensive, but it worked. You know, it was how we made the designers known, because, I mean, even if they created great games, if nobody knew about them. And in those days, you know, one of my philosophies was if I could motivate 10 people to walk into a store and ask for the product, then the retailer has to carry the product.
Right.
Now, I mean, you know, in today's world, it's a different world, because, you know, products aren't sold at retail. They're sold on, you know, Steam or something. And But in those days, it wasn't even big chain stores. It was kind of mom-pop chain stores. And the purchase decision was made in a store. So, it transitioned from at the beginning when we had just strictly what I called mom-pop retailers to toward the end when we were selling Costco and Target and Walmart. And that was a different business. But so Sierra transitioned through the years as the industry transitioned.
Well, your plan absolutely worked because it gave, for me, a real life connection to the game. Like, I love Roger Wilco. I think he's a great character, but I want to meet the two guys from Andromeda because clearly they are the coolest people in the world. And so having that connection gave more depth to the game experience altogether.
Yeah, it wasn't, it wasn't just a marketing hype. I mean, Mark and Scott, if you meet them in real life, the two guys from Andromeda are really characters in real life. Scott is super abrasive and funny and sarcastic, and Mark was so conservative and solid. And when you put the two together in a room and get them bouncing off of each other, that was kind of the magic behind Space Quest. And it's why a lot of these sequels, when you take away the original designer and just keep the characters, but have somebody that doesn't really it's different. I mean, you could switch, take a Stephen King book and have another author try to write his book, and it's not going to work.
Right.
So
right.
So it was real. I mean, it was really and it was unique in that. Even on a movie, when somebody tries to do a movie, it's hard to control it and bring through the original vision of the person who created the story. So that was something unique that Sierra did. That was a job we had to fight every day. Mm-hmm. So,
do you keep in touch with any of the old developers, like any of the other Aldo, the Coles, or Two Guys, et cetera, et cetera?
None of them. Other than maybe every 5 or 10 years we'll email each other, but really not, other than Al. Al Lowe and I still will play golf. We're playing this Friday. And he's still funny and still a great guy. And but that's really the only, and I don't know why. I think some of it is just geography. Roberta and I, at post-retirement, lived in Mexico 6 months a year and on a boat 6 months a year. And we're just never physically, in the U.S. or around where people can find us.
Do you keep your ear to the ground? Like, do you take interest in, the Coles have since crowdfunded a game which is related to Quest for Glory, and the Two Guys have sort of created a game that's kind of a spiritual succession from Space Quest and stuff like that. Do you keep up on these projects?
Well, those two I do, only because I bought into the Kickstarter on Space Quest long ago and received recently, I guess, the beta test for their Space Quest game, but I haven't dug into it. So, but no, I haven't talked to Mark and Scott, in 20 years. And Corey Cole, I've swapped a few emails with here in just the last few days because of my book. And he read it, and I mentioned in there that he and I never got along, which, although that's kind of, I was, Corey is always a highly opinionated guy, and we would bump heads from time to time, but my role was always to support my designers, and I mentioned in the book that I always had kind of a pecking order, where at the top of the chart was the designers, and I treated them like gods, and it didn't matter. They could irritate me all they wanted. I didn't care. As long as their game sold, they're heroes. And if their game didn't sell, then they're just a nice guy that used to work there. But Corey was, he was one of my favorite guys, even though we were very unlikely to ever go out to dinner. But what really counted is Corey and Laurie did amazing games. And I remember on their game that it was originally called Heroes Quest. That's right. And then we hit some sort of trademark infringement, and we had to change the name to Quest for Glory. And that kind of hurt the series.
That's right.
But which was kind of sad because it was a truly great game, and I wish we could have called it Heroes Quest. And probably I should have fought harder on that. On Space Quest, we also hit a trademark conflict. Somebody had a board game that they'd never even actually published But we fought with that guy for years, and I finally wound up paying him off to let us have the Space Quest name. So
Oh, wow.
there was a lot of those kind of behind the scenes battles that were, was part of going to work every day.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of all these quests, so you guys at one point you find yourself with King's Quest and Space Quest, and then, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you kind of had the idea that crime dramas and police media in Hollywood and such was kind of big at the time, so you decided the market could probably use, a police quest game, and so you brought in Jim Walls, and then to follow that up, you saw that the market probably could use an RPG, or Sierra could use an RPG, so you brought in the Coles. I was wondering, was there ever like a quest title or any other title for that matter that you wanted to produce or almost produce, but for whatever reason it didn't happen?
Well, let's see. I always wanted to do something legal, and hooked up with Vincent Bugliosi, who did the Manson trial. He was the prosecuting attorney, and so I actually contracted him to do a kind of a law quest type game about lawyers.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
But then when I started looking for somebody to work with him as far as a team, and because he was very non-computer. In fact, when I went into his house, he had big yellow notepads, literally yellow notepads filled with scribbling, filling the entryway of his house. He was not a computer guy, but I knew that he would work good with our guys to do a good game, and but it never came together. I mentioned John Travolta. We wanted to do this stuff with him, but that would have been more of an exercise. I wanted something to answer Jane Fonda, because she had the workout tapes at the time.
Hmm.
Who else? What else did we want to do? I always wanted to do something with the Titanic, and remember talking to Ballard, the guy that did that, or I guess my attorney was his attorney. Who else? I don't know. There weren't a lot of categories. I mean, generally, if we wanted to do it, we found a way to do it, although a lot of it would come from me meeting somebody who was passionate about something, who I thought could deliver. And ultimately, that became our acquisition strategy more than it became, rather than hiring, because, like I wanted into the board game category. So that was Impressions. I wanted into race car games, and that was Papyrus. I wanted into kids' education software, and that was Brightstar. Then I went into golf game and went after Headgate. So a lot of what we did flowed from product categories I was trying to get into, and then trying to find somebody that was already there that did it really well that I could bring into the Sierra umbrella and give them the kind of distribution and sales that they didn't have before. My favorite division was always Dynamics. Those guys are so creative, especially Jeff Tennell. And the work that they did on 3D Pinball and the Incredible Machine series. We did some very, very cool products. They did some adventure games that weren't so good with Willie Beamish, and although it wasn't bad, it just wasn't what they did best. But then the Aces series and even the Earth Siege, some of the robot stuff.
Yep.
So there were some cool products that they did there that I would always enjoy going down to Dynamics to see their products, or going to Papyrus to see the race games. I was never really into the products that Impressions was doing. They were doing kind of I wanted something to compete with Civilization or SimCity, and went after Impressions, and they had a product called Caesar that did really well for us.
That's right.
So, and what else? Well, then over in Europe, we were doing over half our revenue in Europe, and that came through. I acquired a company called Cocktail Vision, and the other part of that one that made sense was that they were number one in Europe in education, and that was in Europe. All the education is curriculum based, and everybody, every third grader studying exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. And it's very different than the way they do it in the U.S. So that was, it was a good acquisition for us.
That's really cool. Speaking of kind of globetrotting, you'd mentioned how much time you spent traveling, and I was just wondering, from what I understand, you traveled to Japan to obviously get, Sierra Online Japan going for the PC-98, and I was just wondering what you recall as far as how they received adventure games, and as kind of a bonus question, if you were, or how much you recall the Police Quest 2 getting a complete remake, like a graphical remake where they took Police Quest 2 and changed all the characters, I think to appeal more to the Japanese market. The end result was fantastic and also kind of bonkers. So I was wondering if you recall that and how you feel about it.
No, you know more about it than I do. I mostly think of Japan as massive losses. When we were trying, the problem was that the Windows machines and DOS machines weren't really sold over there. They had the PC-9801, which was kind of a not really DOS and not really Windows, and the hardware wasn't. I guess because of the character set, and we had trouble getting our games onto it. I think we did get some running on it, and I didn't remember that we did something custom with Police Quest. That's funny. It'd be fun to see that and see what they did. But we never got any serious amount of revenue out of Japan. Where we made money was taking the Game Arts games, a company in Japan that we published for. Thexter and Sylpheed were really super successful for us in the early days. And somehow I got the license to Frogger. And Frogger we sold a ton of copies of. But I don't remember ever getting, the story about Japan that was kind of interesting was Roberta. I always considered her my partner, and she went to all the business meetings in the early days, and going to Japan was kind of cool. But in those days, the Japanese were, I guess you'd call it chauvinistic or something, but they wouldn't do business with her in a room. And our Japanese agent was kind of like, first he showed up at the hotel and tried to convince me to leave Roberta behind. And then she came, and in the meetings, nobody would look at her, talk to her, and she'd say things, and they kind of brush her off quickly. And this was, that would have been 35 years ago. So the world's changed a lot in 35 years, I assume. I don't know. I haven't been to Japan lately. But it was, so I remember that part of it, and that was kind of a struggle at the time trying to do business there. And that, and there was never, in Japan in those days, it seemed like there was new machines coming often, and people didn't mind owning a machine that only had one or two games on it, as long as it was kind of a really good hit game. And so there would never seem to be one particular machine that had enough of installed base for us to target and make a lot of money on. It was a tough market for us. I think we tried and we lost money for like 10 years and ultimately kind of gave up on selling our products in Japan. So I'm surprised that we did a Police Quest. Probably it was a license deal. Somebody called and said, we'll do all the work and we'll just give you some money. That was that was an easy decision. So it was probably one of those. But Police Quest was a big hit for us, and SWAT was a big hit for us. So we were very happy.
Definitely do yourself a favor and Google Police Quest 2 Japanese when we're done, and you might just find that it looks so fantastically bananas that the loss for 10 years might even be worth it.
I'll try to find it on YouTube, see if I can find like a video walkthrough or something. That'd be fun to see.
Yeah, you'll love it.
And our son wound up, because he enjoyed, we had a younger son who at the time loved Japan and would love going over with us. And he wound up going over and getting a 4-year degree in college from Japan at a Japanese university, and became an engineer in Japan. There's a funny picture in my book of his college graduation where he's kind of the only, because he's so much taller than a lot of the Japanese, and he's a gringo versus all the Japanese. And he went over not really speaking Japanese and learned it, became fluent, and loved Japan. He's back working for Intuit now after a few years working for Amazon, but he did well.
Oh, that's great. That picture reminds me of, I think it was Bill Murray in Lost in Translation, where he's in an elevator and he's just towering over everyone else.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies. That was a good one. Yep.
I had a few questions from the community mailbag to ask you, but I think we've covered a lot of them already.
Yeah.
But there are a couple I think we might still want to cover here. This one comes from Tim McBrien, who asks, which of your projects is most dear to your heart?
Oh, for me, well, I mean, obviously, well, I don't know if it's obvious, the Sierra Network, because Sierra was called Online Systems before I even started it. I mean, I really was always passionate about creating an alternate universe and having, everybody play a role in it. And, kind of the whole massively multiplayer game experience. And the closest I ever got to it was the Sierra Network and a product called The Realm. And, that was something I had fought for from the very beginning. And, and it was just such a technological achievement that how could you not love it? And the technology for it went into all of our games. And I think at the beginning, all of our games were supporting multiplayer. And then the internet came along and that kind of changed the whole game. But for what it was at the time, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. One question from Jamie Retz Bosworth. Do you have any regrets about anything while working in the gaming industry?
Do I have any regrets? I mean, I regret having sold the company. That's, that part's depressing. I shouldn't have sold it. I should have kept running it. I regret the early years when I was so immature and there was so much partying and stuff that went on. And I think about, how much smarter I could have been and how much better the company could have been run at the beginning. But then again, it didn't come through in the products. I mean, the products were great, but we almost went out of business a couple of times. If I could go back and do it again, I'd have been smarter. And we, in '83, we diverted into doing video game cartridges and almost took the company under.
Right.
We, we produced cartridges for TI-99 and COM64 and Atari 800 and even the Atari 2600. And carts were, I don't know, $15 a piece or something. You had to buy them 10,000 at a time. So we took venture capital and bought lots and lots of cartridge inventory, and then the market blew up and kind of took the company under with it. And we were down to, we laid off in one day from 130 people down to 30 people. And we're paying them on our credit cards. So, I look back at that decision and also it kind of hurt personally in that to get all that venture capital, we'd given up a lot of the company so that by the time we sold it, Roberta and I only owned a small piece of the company. So that was, but in terms of products, no, I mean, I talk a little in my book about Outpost, which, was kind of the only project that ever became kind of a project from hell, kind of where it looked beautiful. We kept piling in money, but it never really came together. And then finally we shipped it, and people didn't love it. And that was very frustrating, because, I kind of came off the villain for rushing the product out the door. But then my side of the story was, well, gosh, we're triple over budget and project was out of control. And I don't know, I wasn't sure another year of development would have got us to a fun game. So that project was kind of one of probably the only project I could really remember that got totally out of control. Other mistakes, Phantasmagoria 2, that was a place where we swapped the designer between Phantasmagoria 1 and Phantasmagoria 2. And it kind of shows in the product, where they have such different personalities when you play the two products. And when you do that, people don't forgive you. It kind of sends a message. You can't really trust a sequel. And, that happens in the film industry all the time where, somebody does Halloween, they do Halloween 2, and one's a hit, and you buy the second one, and it may or may not be a hit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was a few of those mistakes along the way, but in general, I'm pretty happy with everything we did.
Good. Daniel Kennerly Rowe asks, what is the best game proposal you've ever had to turn down?
Oh, I don't know that there was ever a good game proposal I turned down. Well, probably. I mean, it would be doing what was it? Doom. Yeah. Or Wolfenstein 3D, I think it was. Yeah, when the id guys came to see me and they had done Commander Keen, and they wanted me to market Doom. And actually, not Doom. It was Wolfenstein 3D. Yeah, I just talked to John Carmack, and he said that he has perfect memory and remembers every minute of everything. And so he was telling me the story of what happened because I didn't remember it well. But apparently, he demonstrated Wolfenstein 3D for me, and we came very close to acquiring id Software. But didn't. And part of what slowed me down was that I really didn't like violent games and still don't. The concept of giving kids a game in which they grab a rifle and run through a building and shoot at people seems inappropriate to me, you should say.
Right.
So, but then again, you look at Wolfenstein 3D or Doom or Quake, and you say, "Gosh, there's a market for this product." So, so what do I know? I guess that would probably be the big fish that got away. Is I should have swallowed my opinion and just bought id Software and marketed the product.
And I guess to follow that one up, Ben Mulholland asks, "What was the worst pitch for a game you ever heard?"
All of them, almost like every day. But, yeah, no, we were pretty. Although actually, I could be talked into stuff. Like when Mark and Scott pitched me on Space Quest, I said no, and then they were persistent, and I said, "Well, go build a little demo and show me." And the second I saw the characters, I suddenly fell in love, and that was it. But no, a lot of people would send in sample games and stuff by mail. In those days, you'd open the mailbag, and I would have somebody open it and do kind of the first round smell test of games, and then bring to me the ones that were worth looking at. And nothing would ever come to me that was worth looking at. Once in a while, I'd go back to them and I'd say, well, let's see what came in the mail because I could do some product. But no, it was all garbage. It was, it's tough. But I don't know. Yeah, no, I didn't see. I'm trying to think if there was anything that particularly stood out as being a bad product. I mean, there were. Now, there were a lot of close calls. We almost bought Westwood Studios with Command & Conquer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was down to, I thought we had the deal done. And I don't remember why it fell apart. And then Broderbund, we actually announced we were merging with them, and then that fell apart.
Wow.
So there were some deals that came very close that should have gone and didn't.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Wow, that's really amazing to think about, like fantasy alternate universes. What if those had gone through? Those are some.
I wish I had done like Blizzard, something like that with Diablo and some of those games. But I don't understand. I still don't know how Davidson managed to get them and I didn't. But oh well, 20/20 hindsight.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess one last from the mailbag, and this is one of the hard questions since we have you on the hot seat. Tim Byrne asks, do you like cheese?
Do I like cheese? I have always had weight problems, unfortunately. And there was like 2 years when I ate nothing but meat and cheese. And during that time, I lost 85 pounds and was actually looking really good, but boy, was I sick of cheese. I never wanted to eat cheese again. But, or see a steak, and so it kind of backfired in that now when I think about meat and cheese, I think about that year of only meat and cheese, and all I can think about is give me some spaghetti. Oh well,
That's great.
But,
Couldn't have asked for a better answer to that one.
so we know it worked, but that's it. So the answer, I guess, would be no. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Well, I hope that answered it.
I've got one last one for you, mate, and we'll let you get on with your day after giving us so much just amazing stories here.
Yeah.
Even though I was on this podcast, I'll want to probably re-listen to it a few times, probably cringe at my own voice, but still.
Yeah.
So we hear tell of many good times from Sierra, and whether it's the golden days, the early days, whatever it may be. I was just wondering if you could give us one behind the scenes story that stands out to you as particularly humorous or endearing or even debaucherous.
Well, I'm trying to think. I mean, all the good debaucherous stories Steve Levy told in his book Hackers. That no, what's not been told. We had when Roberta and I moved into a new house, we had an amazing party. We just kind of invited everybody in the industry and wound up with over 800 people that showed up in one day.
Whoa.
And that was kind of a wild time. Everybody from the industry, everybody. It was kind of a big house on a river that we just built. We were doing a housewarming party, and I can't think of anything, though, particularly interesting out of that. There's nothing, behind the scenes, we're actually pretty boring people. In those days, we were a lot more fun, but even then, most of the fun happened. We had a house in town. Most of the programmers we hired in those days, it was a different world in that game programming wasn't considered a business. Even business programming wasn't really a business. There was no computer science degrees. So
Right.
when it came time to hire programmers, nobody working for a real company would have ever quit a job to go to work for a silly game company. So who I was hiring as programmers were kind of kids from 17 to 21. And even, Rourke Wygant, I forget which game he did, but he was one of our first programmers. And his parents flew into town with him to introduce him to me and look me in the eye and say, "You are going to take good care of my kid, aren't you?" And we didn't tell him that we were going to move him into a house with, I think, 9 other young kids. And it was kind of like a frat house type environment. And that was, imagine plus we paid well. So suddenly you've got all these kids running around that are literally kids with a lot of money and a lot of fun. And we we weren't working normal hours. People kind of worked when they were in the mood, and and I tried to it was more being a ringmaster than being a boss in the very early days. Mm-hmm. But it worked. It was what was appropriate to the time. But by the end, the Sierra was a very different company in that, we had desks and chairs and work hours and, all the stuff that comes with being a real company. But the fun days were the beginning days.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for creating a legacy that has lasted for many generations and will continue to last for more generations, entertaining and educating. I'm the type of person that wasn't really that great at school. And if it weren't for playing your games, I don't think I would have been able to excel in the fields I've excelled at now. At being able to run my own business as well was influenced by everything you and Roberta had done. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and the whole community that has been influenced by everything you have done.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. From childhood me, young adulthood me, present me, and the entire community that spawned because of your games that you and Roberta were behind.
Well, thank you. Thanks for keeping all the old memories alive and keeping the games alive. That means a lot to us.
Yeah, here, and I'll just tip my hat in that pool and also say thank you to and Roberta for giving me just priceless memories with my father that I'm now creating with my son. And one day my son will be able to say, my father and his father before him played DC, and it'll go a long way. What Sierra means to our family and to so many people. So from the bottom of my heart as well, thank you, mate.
Yeah, thank you. That was great, Ken. Thank you for being there. So good to hear your voice.
Thank you, and talk to you later.
All right, mates, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we have. My God, it's been surreal and just, I'm almost at a loss for words, which is rare. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Check us out on Facebook. We're a page. We're a group, facebook.com/Classic Gamers Guild. You can send us an email if you'd like. We're at mail@classicgamersguild.com. You can find us on Instagram, which is at CGG Podcast. Find us on Twitter. Do us a tweet at the CG Guild. Check us out on Patreon. And a huge thank you to everyone who supports us on Patreon, makes this show possible, especially those in the extra special tier, which would be Mark Fillion and Jay Holmes. So yeah, thank you guys for making this show possible. Thank you to everyone who listens. We love you all very much, and don't do a murder.